Wishart.
And I'm very grateful to you, Mr Chair, and it's a pleasure to follow the Honourable Lady. I mean, I just love all the new Tory members of Parliament. They're the best recruiting sergeant that we have for the cause of independence anywhere in the House. The lack of understanding about the devolution settlement is just astounding sometimes. The lack of what they're actually doing with their very contributions and how that assisting our cause is just fantastic for us. And we very much enjoy every single contribution they make, and we encourage them. Please get up and disparage Scotland. Tell us that our democracy doesn't matter. Tell us no all the time, because all it does is to grow support for independence. Of course I give way to the Honourable Lady.
I would just like to thank the Honourable Member opposite for his mansplaining. Thank you.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Lady, and I have to say I enjoyed her speech, and I just wish they'd make more of them, because all it's doing is driving support for us up. But Mr Chair, I rise today to oppose totally and utterly clauses 46 and clauses 47 in their absolute entirety. Because with these closed clauses, we're now getting into the festering guts of this rotten rogue state bill. And we have a look at how its entrails choke the very life out of our Parliament and stifle our Scottish democracy. And I hope that paints a vivid enough picture for everybody opposite there. These are clauses that, if passed, would bring a shuddering halt to our Parliament's exclusive authority on the developers agreed in the Scotland Act 1998. Well, I tend to eat Tory backbenchers for breakfast, but if he wants, I'll let him come in.
Mr Chair, I'm very grateful for the vivid description of the political impact of the bill. But does the Honourable Member for Perth and North Perthshire recognise that the powers which this bill concerns are currently maintained in Brussels, supervised by the Council of Ministers, on which the devolved administrations have no representation, and therefore he and his colleagues will have greater say over these matters when they are controlled by this House than they have done hitherto.
Exactly.
It's probably just as well that I've eaten, Mr Chair, because I would consume that with no problem at all. Can I just say to the Honourable Gentleman... Can I just say to the Honourable Gentleman, we would have the authority of the EU looking over Scotland any day before Rogue State UK. Any day. And I say to them that very candidly and very sincerely. No, I won't. I might later. I might later come back for another, because he is a prize on these opposite benches, and of course you will want to hear from him in time, because I really enjoy our little exchanges. But can I just say, Mr Chair, that never before has devolution faced such a challenge and such an audacious attempt to circumvent its authority. Never before has a piece of legislation presented itself that actually just seeks to undermine the authority of Scottish democracy. Mr Chair, the Scotland Act 1998 is quite a simple document. It's a very elegant document. It was very thoughtfully constructed. At the heart of the Scotland Act 1998 is this idea that if the powers listed in Schedule 5 of the bill aren't listed as reserved, everything else is assumed to be devolved. It's something that's underpinned 21 years of devolution of the Scottish Parliament, and it served us well. It was designed by the Labour Party, and I give them credit for what they did. It came out of the views and visions of the Constitutional Convention in the 1990s. The reserved powers list was the personal idea of Donald Dewar. A few people have mentioned him today, and I think it's right to recognise him as what we call as the father of devolution. He very carefully crafted the Scotland Act to ensure that it would be enduring, that devolution would be enduring. With these clauses, what we do for the first time ever with devolution is to blur and to confuse what is reserved and what is devolved. Now, what I'm going to do in my contribution is try to understand a little bit better why we're doing this. What's this intention and what's this purpose, and what is going to be the result of what is being proposed? And Mr Chair, you'll remember, you've been in the House as long as I have, I think I've spoken in every Scotland Act. In fact, I've probably led for the Scottish National Party in every Scotland Act, other than the 1998 Act when I wasn't in the House. And you'll probably remember, Mr Chair, the 2012 Scotland Act, which followed the Calvin Commission. And what that did specifically was to look at Schedule 5, at the reserved powers. And I remember a very curious debate in this House. It was about Antarctica. And because Antarctica wasn't listed in Schedule 5 of the Scotland Act, it was presumed to be devolved to Scotland. Now, can I reassure colleagues opposite, we have no territorial claim to the South Atlantic. The penguins and the narwhals can relax that they're not going to be under the jurisdiction of Scotland. But so seriously did this House take the distinction between reserved and devolved that we're prepared to debate Antarctica to ensure it was placed in Schedule 5 of the Scotland Act. Now they are prepared to throw that all away. And for what? Yes, I'll give way to the Honourable.
Honourable Gentleman's making an absolutely fine speech there, and he's pointing out the way that the devolution is being torn apart by the party opposite. And the answer to this, the answer that's increasingly coming poll after poll to the Scottish people, the answer to this is not to continue arguing with the Conservatives. The answer is independence, and we'll go up the road and they can argue the way they want themselves.
That's what they want to do is up to them. Get on with it, for goodness sake. Just don't take our country down with us. It was absolutely spot on. But can I say, the government's view on all this, and I've listened to some of the speeches, and they're totally astounding, some of the contributions that we've heard from members opposite. It's just, there's nothing to see here. Don't worry your precious little jockish heads about what we're doing. All we're doing is just merely copying what the EU do on state aid and structural funding. Can I say to the honourable gentlemen and ladies opposite, this idea that there's some sort of equivalence between the European Union and the UK is total and utter bunkum and nonsense. Let me explain to them. The EU, right? It's a partnership association made up of member states. It's a rules-based organisation based on the decisions of its members. The United Kingdom, on the other hand, is an incorporating union which simply subsumes Scotland as a nation and forces us under the sovereignty of this Parliament, even though we agree in the principle of the sovereignty of the people. They could not be more different. But yet again, they tell us that this is all about an equivalence with the EU, and it is utter and utter bunkum. Just very briefly.
Thank you for giving way. And again, just to remind the people opposite, isn't it the case that the EU has never forced one infrastructure project on Scotland, but Clause 46 allows the UK government to do what they want in Scotland against the wishes of the Scottish Parliament?
And that is exactly the essence of what this is all about. This idea that somehow they know better for Scotland other than the directly elected representatives of the people in the Scottish Parliament is an absurd suggestion. And it doesn't strike any sort of evidence that they know better than the Scottish Parliament, and we will not accept that. And I thank the honourable gentleman for his thoughts. But they also, this is the other thing that they've got said today, that we're somehow complaining about extra funding. A, is there any extra funding? B, where does it come from? C, how much is it going to be? We'll have a debate about extra funding if they could answer all these things. And I'm looking at the honourable lady down there, so maybe she could tell us. But we have the devolved powers for a particular reason. It's because that we want democratic control over these decision makers and everything from education to health to infrastructure to water, all the things that they now want to exercise responsibility over. Before devolution, Mr Chair, there was, of course, the Scotland... I've got time, I'm conscious that people want to come in. Before devolution, there was a Scotland Office. Scotland Office exercised responsibility, authority and powers over all the areas that are now controlled by the Scottish Parliament. The reason that devolution came across was to directly express democratic control over these responsibilities. What they want to do is to go back to the dark days of the 1980s under the regime of Michael Forsyth and Malcolm Rifkin. And I'll tell them something. Scotland... They're going here. Can I just say, I'm hearing a here from the honourable gentleman from West Aberdeenshire. Can I just say that the rest of Scotland does not share that ambition, and I'm pretty certain that when he stands next year in the Scottish Parliament, he's going to actually find that out. So this is what they're doing. They're attempting to take us back to those sorts of days. Extra money is great if there is any extra money, how much it is, whatever it is, how it's going to be distributed, but it should be under the democratic control of the Scottish Parliament when it comes to the devolved powers, because that is what it's there to do. So why are they really doing this? Well, here's my theory, and you can tell me if I'm on the right tracks. They can never win an election in Scotland. The Scottish Conservatives have absolutely no chance of winning an election in Scotland. The new ever-cheerful member for Murray and his belligerent Baroness partner are actually taking the Scottish Conservatives further down. They're sinking below 20% in the polls. So what they're thinking is, we're never ever going to get legislative responsibility and control of the Scottish Government. So what we'll do, we'll just go around it. We'll just circumvent it. That's actually easier for the Scottish Conservatives than winning an election. So that is why they are doing it. And another thing that they're doing is what I call slap-a-jacking it. Slap-a-jacking it. This idea that somehow the Scottish people will learn to love the Conservatives if they see a whole road of projects with Union Jacks on, given by the largesse and generosity of the Great Britain and United Kingdom Parliament. Nothing will irritate the Scottish people more than that, than seeing all this rubbish splattered about our country. And I'll just finish with this, Mr. Speaker. Aggressive unionism isn't working for them. It's not working for them. And I know they've got all these new figures in the Scotland office. They've got the new Constitution unit. Surely somebody and all these great thinkers in the union must be able to turn round to them and say to them, we've tried this. We've tried undermining the powers of the Scottish Parliament. We've tried slap-a-jacking it. We've tried to do all these things to curtail Scottish democracy. And all that's happening is support for independence is going up and up and up. Now, I might just be me, but if you're doing the same thing again and again and it's not working for you, surely you should change it and do something different to try and ensure that the union case will prevail. Because what they are doing, and it's something that it's almost to our benefit that they're continuing with this type of aggressive unionism. Because what we are seeing is a rise in support for independence. So it's giving them this type of advice is only done because I know they won't ever take it. But what they are doing is ensuring their union's demise. Mr. Chair, the days of Scotland being subject to rubbish like this rogue state UK bill, the stripping of our powers, the diminishing of our democracy, is a day too long. This is now going to be critical in the next Scottish parliamentary election. They are going to get gubbed. There's going to be a demand from Scotland for independence, and it will be goodbye Westminster, and it can't come soon enough.